The gods of Rome are watching you right now, not from heaven. From the small shrine in the corner of the kitchen, from the figurine on the shelf above the doorway, from the sacred flame that your wife tends every morning before anyone else is awake. The gods of Rome are not distant. They are here, in the house, in the street, in the crossroads outside, in the river you drink from, in the boundary stones of your field. They are present in the way that walls are present. You don't think about them constantly, but remove them and everything collapses. Roman religion was not like modern religion. It was not a matter of personal belief, private faith, or the interior life of the soul. It was a system of transactions, precise, contractual, public, between human beings and the supernatural forces that governed the world. And understanding it changes everything about how you see Rome. This is the story of what Romans actually believed, how they worshipped, why the gods mattered so much to a civilization that was in most other respects extraordinarily practical and rational. And why Rome, uniquely among ancient powers, could absorb almost any foreign god into its system without contradiction. Stay with me. This one goes deep. And if you're not subscribed, do it now. This channel goes places most history content doesn't bother to go. Let's start with the most important concept in Roman religion, the one that, once you understand it, makes everything else make sense. Do ut des, Latin. It means, I give so that you may give. This was the fundamental logic of Roman religious practice. Not faith, not devotion, not love of the divine. A transaction. You give the gods something, a sacrifice, a prayer, an offering, a temple, and in return, the god gives you something back. Protection, victory, a good harvest, a healthy child, recovery from illness. The relationship between a Roman and their gods was explicitly contractual. When a Roman general was about to fight a battle, he might make a vow, a votum, promising a god that if he won, he would build them a temple. Or sacrifice 100 oxen, or hold games in their honor. If he won, he was legally and religiously obligated to fulfill the vow. If he lost, well, the god clearly hadn't upheld their end. This sounds transactional to a degree that can seem almost cynical to modern ears. But it was deeply sincere. Romans took their vows seriously. The temples that line the Roman Forum were not built out of piety alone. They were built because a general had promised, in a moment of crisis, that he would build them if the gods helped him win. The gods were not moral authorities in the way that modern Western religion conceives of divinity. Jupiter didn't care if you were a good person. He cared whether you had performed the correct rituals, made the correct offerings, and upheld your end of the contractual relationship. Behavior and belief mattered far less than practice. You could believe whatever you liked about the gods in the privacy of your own mind. What the Roman religious system required was participation in the correct rituals at the correct times. This distinction between orthopraxy and orthodoxy is one of the most fundamental differences between Roman religion and the Abrahamic traditions that eventually replaced it. Let's talk about the gods themselves. The Roman pantheon is both familiar and strange. Familiar, because so many of its members have been absorbed into Western culture through their Greek equivalents. Jupiter is Zeus, Juno is Hera, Mars is Ares, Venus is Aphrodite. Strange because in Roman practice, these gods had specific technical functions that went well beyond the familiar myths. Jupiter Optimus Maximus, Jupiter the best and greatest, was the chief deity of Rome, worshipped on the Capitoline Hill in the greatest temple in the city. His cult was the official state religion in its most concentrated form. The great triumphs, the military victory parades, culminated at his temple, where the victorious general made offerings and dedicated a portion of the spoils. But Jupiter was not simply a sky god or a king of the gods in Roman practice. He was the guarantor of Rome's power, the divine force that validated Roman authority over the world. When Rome made treaties, they were sworn in Jupiter's name. When Rome went to war, Jupiter was invoked as the divine authority for that war's legitimacy. Mars was originally not simply the god of war. He was associated with agriculture and with the protection of the community. War in the Roman understanding being an extension of the protection of the farmstead from external threats. His month, March, began the agricultural and military year simultaneously. Janus, one of the distinctively Roman gods without a Greek equivalent, was the god of beginnings, transitions, and doorways. His month is January. Every Roman doorway had a Janus face, two faces looking in opposite directions, in and out simultaneously. He was invoked at the beginning of every significant undertaking. His temple in the Roman Forum had doors that stood open in time of war and were closed in time of peace. In Rome's entire history, those doors were closed only a handful of times. The Lares and Penates were the gods of the household itself, not cosmic forces, but domestic ones, the divine presence that lived in your specific house, protecting your specific family. Every Roman home had a lararium, a small household shrine, where the Lares were worshipped daily with small offerings of food, wine, and incense. These were not public gods, they were your gods, personal, familiar, present. Now let's talk about what Roman religious practice actually looked like. At the state level, Roman religion was managed by a priestly class that was itself deeply political. The major priestly colleges, the pontifices, the augurs, the flamines, were composed of elite Roman men who held both religious and political roles simultaneously. Julius Caesar was Pontifex Maximus, head of the Roman religious establishment, before he was dictator. Augustus held the same title and incorporated it into the imperial office, where it remained until a Christian emperor gave it up and the Bishop of Rome eventually claimed it. The pontifices managed the official calendar, determining which days were fas and which were nefas, which days were suitable for legal business, which for public assemblies, which for religious festivals. The calendar was a religious document as much as a civil one. The augurs practiced augury, the interpretation of divine will through the observation of natural signs, particularly the behavior of birds. Before any significant public act, a military campaign, an election, a legal proceeding, augurs would observe the sky for signs. The flight patterns of birds, their feeding behavior, the appearance of the sacred chickens kept for this purpose. If the signs were unfavorable, the activity was postponed. This sounds like superstition, and by modern standards it was. But in Roman practice, augury served a real function. It provided a mechanism for stopping or delaying actions that were politically premature, covering the decision in divine authority rather than human calculation. When a general's campaign plan was bad, augury could give him a face-saving reason to delay without admitting the tactical problem. The Vestal Virgins occupied a unique position in Roman religious life. 6 women, chosen in childhood, who served a 30-year term, maintaining the sacred flame of Vesta in her circular temple in the Forum. The flame was the hearth fire of Rome itself. As long as it burned, Rome endured. The Vestals who tended it lived under strict rules. Most famously, the requirement of sexual chastity during their term of service. Violation was punished by burial alive. In exchange, the Vestals received extraordinary privileges. They could own property. They could make wills without a tutor. They had reserved seats at public events. They could free condemned prisoners by touching them. They were among the most legally autonomous women in Rome. Sacred chastity bought legal freedom. Roman religion negotiated in paradoxes. Let's talk about sacrifice, because it was the central ritual act of Roman religion, and it looked nothing like modern religious practice. A Roman sacrifice was a public event. An animal, the type depending on the deity being worshipped, the occasion, and the resources available, was led to the altar, which stood outside the temple, not inside. The god lived inside. The ritual happened in public. The animal was inspected. It had to be physically perfect, no blemishes, no injuries. A flawed animal was unacceptable. An animal that struggled or tried to escape was a bad omen. The animal's willingness to approach the altar was itself read as divine approval. Then it was killed. The method varied by deity and tradition, usually a hammer blow to the head, followed by a knife to the throat. The blood was collected and offered to the god. The internal organs, particularly the liver, were examined by specialists called haruspices for signs of divine approval or disapproval. A liver with abnormalities was a warning. A perfect liver was a green light. The carcass was then divided. The gods received the parts considered their due: fat, bones, certain organs, burned on the altar. The rest was eaten by the priests, by the magistrates who had ordered the sacrifice, often by the public at a feast connected to the religious event. Sacrifice in Rome was not destruction for its own sake. It was a meal shared between humans and gods, with the sacred portions given to the divine, and the rest consumed by the community. The communal feast that followed a major public sacrifice was a significant social event. Here is one of the most remarkable facts about Roman religion, and one of the most important for understanding Rome's imperial success. Rome did not require conquered peoples to abandon their gods. This is almost unique in ancient imperial history. When Rome conquered a territory, it did not impose Roman religion and ban local practices. It absorbed, it adapted, it found equivalences. This local god is essentially the same as Jupiter. This goddess maps onto Venus, and incorporated foreign divinities into the Roman system. The process had a name: Interpretatio Romana, Roman interpretation. Foreign gods were identified with their nearest Roman equivalent and quietly brought into the fold. More remarkably still, Rome actively imported foreign cults. The cult of the Phrygian goddess Cybele, the Magna Mater, the Great Mother, was officially brought to Rome from Asia Minor in 204 BC. During the Second Punic War, after the Sibylline books were consulted and recommended it. Her black meteoric stone was carried to Rome in a formal procession and housed in a new temple on the Palatine Hill. This was not tolerance for its own sake, it was pragmatic theology. More divine support from more divine sources could only help. Why reject the religious resources of conquered peoples when you could add them to your own? The system eventually had limits. Roman religion could absorb almost anything except exclusivity. A god that claimed to be the only god, that required its worshippers to abandon all other religious practice, was a problem. Not because Rome was intolerant of the theology, but because exclusive religious practice meant refusal to participate in Roman state religion. Refusal to make the official sacrifices. Refusal to acknowledge the divine authority behind Roman power. This is why Jews and Christians were periodically persecuted in Rome. Not for what they believed. Rome genuinely did not care about private belief, but for what they refused to do publicly. Let's end with the mystery religions, because they represent something in Roman religious life that the official state cult did not provide. And their spread across the empire tells us something important about what people were looking for. The mystery religions, Mithraism, the cult of Isis, the Eleusinian mysteries imported from Greece, eventually Christianity, offered something that Jupiter and the Lares and the augurs didn't: personal transformation, salvation, a direct, intimate relationship between the individual and the divine, the promise of something better after death. Official Roman religion was focused on this world. The do ut des transaction was about earthly outcomes: victory, health, harvest. The Roman afterlife, the shadowy realm of the shades, the underworld, was not an appealing prospect in Roman religious imagination. It was gray, insubstantial, a pale continuation of existence rather than a reward. The mystery religions offered something different: initiation rituals that symbolized death and rebirth, secret knowledge that bound the initiate into a community of believers. Personal experience of the divine, not just the correct performance of external ritual, but an interior encounter with something transcendent. Mithraism, The cult most popular among Roman soldiers involved initiation ceremonies, a shared sacred meal, a structured hierarchy of grades, and the worship of Mithras as a cosmic force of light and truth. It was practiced in underground temples called Mithraea, small, intimate spaces designed for a community of initiates rather than a public audience. Christianity was, in its early centuries, one mystery religion among several competing in the Roman market. It offered what the others offered: community, salvation, personal relationship with the divine, and added to it a radical social equality. In Christ, Paul wrote, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female." In a society as rigidly hierarchical as Rome, that message was explosive. It took 300 years, but it won. The gods of Rome are not watching anymore. The shrines are in museums, the flames are out, the augurs are gone. But the footprint remains. The calendar we use is a Roman religious calendar. The word January comes from Janus, March from Mars. The days of the week preserve the names of Roman and Roman-adjacent gods. Saturday is Saturn's day, Sunday the sun's, Monday the moon's. You invoke Roman gods every time you name a day. They are not entirely gone. They are just embedded so deeply in the structure of ordinary life that we no longer see them. Which, if you think about it, is exactly where the Romans always believed they were. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep going deeper. Leave a comment. Tell me which Roman deity or religious practice surprised you most. The next video is right there. See you there.